You're listening to WNYC. We're happy to have you with us on this Monday. Coming up, a situation most of us are probably familiar with is checking out at a retail store and being asked if we want to open a store credit card.
They tempt you, right? Like, do you want to save 10% off today's purchase or 20% off today's purchase?
A look into department store credit cards and how they've become an essential piece of stores' bottom lines. That's coming up next on Marketplace, so stay with us. You're listening to WNYC at 6:30.
Support for WNYC comes from Optimum Business, offering business fiber with speeds up to 8 gig. More information is available at 855-2-OPTIMUM or at optimum.com/business.
This is WNYC 93.9 FM and AM 820, NPR News and the New York Conversation.
Marketplace is supported by Progressive Insurance. The Name Your Price tool provides a range of coverage options. Progressive.com. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Data or datum? We're good either way. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by the United States Postal Service, offering postage stamps for purchase at more than 40,000 supermarkets, drugstores, office suppliers, and wholesale clubs. And by Rubrik. When cyber attacks put businesses at risk, Rubrik provides the power to bounce back fast. More at Rubrik.com. And by Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, working to treat previously untreatable cancers through protein degradation, which can target cancer-causing proteins and destroy them. Danafarber.org/everywhere.
In Los Angeles, I'm Kai Ryssdal. It is Monday today, the 29th of April. Good as always to have you along, everybody. We try to shy away from hyperbole on this program, but sometimes the news is what the news is. And this is a big news week for this economy. Data is the word to the wise, in the plural, by the way, and it's coming from everywhere. Reports from the private sector will include the Consumer Confidence Index from the Conference Board and a key index on manufacturing from the Institute for Supply Management. There is federal data coming as well. The Labor Department will give us the Employment Cost Index, literally how much labor is costing employers. We'll get the JOLTS data as well, open jobs in this economy. And then the biggie on Friday, the April unemployment report. Now, you do not have to be a too terribly regular listener to this program to know that data is the lifeblood of the Federal Reserve of late. The central bank wants to see more of it over more time. And the cornucopia of data coming this week is completely unlikely to change the Fed's minds on interest rates right now. The federal funds rate is going to stay where it is. But all the same, we thought it would be a good idea for Marketplace's Justin Ho to get a read on how Chair Powell and the gang are thinking about things.
Let's get one type of data out of the way. When it comes to prices, we know exactly what the Fed is looking for.
Very, very low rates of price increases.
That's Jay Bryson, chief economist at Wells Fargo. Thing is, keeping price increases low and steady is only half of the Federal Reserve's famous dual mandate. The other half is maximizing employment. If the unemployment rate rises when the jobs report comes out this week, Bryson says that could actually be good news because it could mean more people join the labor force and started looking for jobs.
That would help keep wage gains in check, and that's also a very important critical component of inflation.
Previous jobs reports have shown that wage gains have been slowing down. Winnie Caesar, global head of strategy at CreditSights, says if wages stagnate,
that would begin to tell the Fed that there's maybe a little bit more slack in the labor market than they are currently viewing.
And maybe the Fed will start thinking it's time to cut interest rates. On the other hand, Caesar says wage gains could pick up again.
And that would be yet another data point to kind of confirm that the Fed should probably stay a little bit more restrictive for longer than most people are expecting, at least at the beginning of the year.
There's also the Institute for Supply Management's Manufacturing Index, another private sector reports out this week that'll give us a sense of how the economy's doing more generally. Tim Dewey, chief U.S. economist at SGH Macro Advisors, says the Fed will be watching for whether those come in stronger than expected.
And if that's the case, then they're going to say, well, wait a second here. Why should we cut rates anytime soon?
But since inflation has been pretty stubborn this year, Dewey says the Fed just isn't as concerned with those private sector data points, or even the labor market for that matter.
It would have to take some big moves, big negative moves in the rest of the economy in order to divert your focus from the inflation mandate.
Dewey says once the Fed feels confident enough that it's tamed inflation, then it can focus on the job market. I'm Justin Ho for Marketplace.
No big negative moves on Wall Street this Monday. Up moderately. We'll have the details when we do the numbers. The average late fee on a credit card bill right now, and this is from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, is $32. And that, says the CFPB, which is to say the Biden administration, is a junk fee. And the White House is trying to crack down on them by capping that late fee that banks charge credit card users at $8 per transaction. Good for consumers, right? Not great if you're a bank. Also, it's safe to say that retailers like Nordstrom and Macy's and Kohl's aren't wild about it either, especially given the hard-ish times that those chains now find themselves in. Because, as Marketplace's Kristen Schwab reports, those credit cards have become an important part of department stores' bottom lines.
When you think of credit cards, you might think of one of the big issuers, like Visa or MasterCard, or maybe you think of banks. But credit cards were actually invented by retailers.
In the beginning, this was just done as a bookkeeping thing, in a notebook behind the counter, essentially.
Bill Maurer is a professor of anthropology and law at the University of California, Irvine. He says these less formal lines of credit were the standard for a while, but eventually stores started offering physical cards. They were these small metal plates.
Kind of look the same size and shape as a military dog tag that would have the customer's information on it.
The point was to create customer loyalty. It was the early 20th century, and new stores were opening left and right.
Retailers and merchants really sought a way to get customers to keep coming back to their shop instead of going to their competitors, to the point where, some merchants almost functioned like bankers.
Retailers eventually realized they are better at selling stuff than lending money, and actual banks took over the logistics. But store cards are still an important piece of their business today. They help retailers gather data on what people are buying and promote targeted discounts. And Moody's retail analyst Christina Boney says these credit cards connect customers to the brand.
I do remember that I was really excited to have a Bloomingdale's credit card.
She says store cards encourage spending. They also generate another line of income because they have steeper interest rates than bank-issued cards. Those rates recently hit record highs of nearly 29%. One analyst estimates that Macy's makes nearly half of its operating profits from its credit card program. Boney says the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's move to limit late fees will hurt department stores the most.
Is one more thing that they're going to have to contend with and going to have to pivot. If you think about those lost dollars just flow directly right to the bottom line.
Now, there will always be some demand for store cards, says Ted Rossman, a credit card analyst at Bankrate.com. It's often easier to get approved for, say, a Gap card than an American Express, so it's many people's first line of credit. And sometimes store cards are the only solution to a financial emergency.
Point of sale, easy financing, like somebody who really needs credit now because otherwise they're not going to be able to buy that new refrigerator or that new set of tires.
But Rossman says those customers are increasingly moving away from credit cards and instead are choosing buy now, pay later options like Affirm and Klarna. To lure them back, he says more retailers might move towards co-branded cards. Those are cards issued by the store that can be used anywhere, not just at the one brand.
A retailer like Costco, that's a really popular card, not just for Costco, but for gas and travel and other things.
And retailers will need to push their cards even harder. So we might experience that familiar moment at checkout even more when the sales associate motions toward that little pamphlet by the cash register.
They tempt you, right? Like, do you want to save 10% off today's purchase or 20% off today's purchase?
Sounds pretty good until you compare it to that 30% APR. I'm Kristen Schwab for Marketplace.
We don't have, as far as I know, a Marketplace credit card. But you know what we do have? A podcast. Check it out, marketplace.org, or obviously follow us on the platform of your choice. Two things to start this next segment. First, high housing costs and low inventory, the through line of the American housing market for a good long while now, are a global issue as well, including over in the UK. According to the most recent in an annual data set from the British government, in 2023, full-time workers over there would have to have spent 8.3 times their annual earnings to be able to buy a home. That is double what it was in 2000. So that's item one. Item two is the computer game The Sims. Originally released in 2000, the game where you create and control digital people and, among other things, build houses for them free of costs and other reality-based constraints. Here's today's installment of our series, Adventures in Housing.
My name's Elle Hunt. I live in Norwich, England, and a few months after I put in an offer on my first flat, I started playing The Sims. I hadn't played it since 2000 when I was 8 years old, and it was a real kind of sight of nostalgia for me. I was always very focused on the home ownership aspect of it. I would use cheat codes to give me limitless funds and create sort of gargantuan palaces. And there's a lot of attention paid to the interior design, the decor. And if I couldn't afford it, I'd just give myself more money. The Sims had really kind of seeded that desire for home ownership in me at a young age, and what it represented, the stability, the sense of that you could create a dwelling that really reflected your whole being. And I'd spent the interim, 20 plus years walking away from that dream a bit, and here I was back again. I felt quite wistful for the hopes and feelings that I had as a child of what adulthood would be like. I also was reflecting on how different it had been and how much harder. It was only when I was in university, I think, or about to graduate, that I realized how bad the housing market was headed. And since then, it's pretty steadily gotten worse, no matter where I've lived. Returning to The Sims, being kind of reminded of all of that childhood optimism I had, or just not even optimism, the sense that if I worked hard, by 30, I would be able to have a house where I could knock down a wall. That has not been a guarantee. I moved in about 6 weeks ago. When I got the keys, it sort of hit me how with that freedom also comes a lot of choices and a lot of bills. And you do have to afford it within the reality of your income. It is not as easy as The Sims made it out to be by, clicking a wall, don't like that color, click again. Oh, you're out of money? We can fix that. There are no cheat codes in real life. Looking back on my past 8-year-old self playing The Sims, making her kind of McMansions in the suburbs, I think she would have anticipated that I would have maybe had a bigger house, and maybe in London, to be honest, at the age of 33 and where I'm at in my career. But I can also see, looking back, like I made choices that were within reach that I could afford, and I'm very happy with where I've ended up.
Elle Hunt, happy in her flat in Norwich, England. Housing is indeed a global story. So tell us your adventure, would you? Wherever you live, you can do it at marketplace.org. Coming up.
There's nothing about the desk phone that I miss.
Literally have not used the one in my office in better than 4 years now. First, though, let's do the numbers. Dow Industrial's up 146 points, about 0.4%, 38,386. The Nasdaq advanced 55 points, 0.3%, finished at 15,983. The S&P 500 added 16 points, also 0.3%, 51 and 16. We get first quarter results from Amazon tomorrow. Can't wait that long? All right, fine. Here's one morsel to take the edge off. The company says more customers are waiting less time for their orders. Nearly 60% of Prime orders in the top 60 metro areas in this economy arrive the same day or next day. That's up from 50% about a year ago. Amazon delivered 0.75% to investors today. Tesla surged 15%. That's after Beijing apparently nodded yes to the question, hey, can we bring our controversial advanced self-driving service thingy to your massive market? You're listening to Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Progressive Insurance, helping protect small businesses and the owners that run them. Whether a plumber, accounting business, or restaurant, Progressive can help with over 30 customizable coverages. Online quotes available in as little as 6 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. And by Baird. Baird strives to attract and retain top financial professionals, providing stability and continuity of advice for clients across market environments. More information at BairdDifference.com. And by Rubrik, a cybersecurity company focused on securing the world's data. When cyber attacks put businesses, reputations, and careers at risk, Rubrik provides the power to bounce back fast and become cyber resilient. Rubrik.com.
WNYC is supported by FX's The Veil, an international spy thriller starring Elizabeth Moss. One woman has a secret and the other has a mission to reveal it before thousands of lives are lost. Premieres April 30th only on Hulu.
Dating can be stressful under the best of circumstances. If you're over 50, it can be particularly daunting. But there are reasons for optimism. Maggie Jones is contributing writer for the New York Times Magazine, and she recently spoke to dozens of people about their experiences dating after 50. On the next All of It, she joins us to talk about what she learned and take your calls. Join us for All of It, weekdays at noon on WNYC.
You're listening to Marketplace right here on WNYC, and we're happy to have you with us. 75 degrees this evening under partly cloudy skies. It'll be mostly cloudy tonight with lows in the upper 50s. And on Tuesday, mostly cloudy skies with a high around 66 degrees.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Rizdal. Sunday was a big day at the Port of Baltimore, which welcomed its first container ship since the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed last month. The ship squeaked in through a temporary 35-foot deep channel that opened up at the end of last week, mostly to let ships that had been stuck in port out, to be clear. But even the relative trickle of incoming traffic is a bright spot for the thousands of workers and the dozens and dozens of small businesses that move cargo in, out, and around the port of Baltimore. Marketplace's Amy Scott spent some time on the ground to see how it's been going.
Inside an 80,000 square foot warehouse in Baltimore, a young man unloads boxes of canned albacore tuna from the back of a truck and stacks them on a pallet. Next, the pallet will get wrapped in stretchy plastic and whisked away on a forklift to be stacked among food from China, Europe, and South America.
We have lemon juice. We have banana chips, a lot of olives.
Sue Monahan founded Baltimore International Warehousing and Transportation in 1987. Today, she has 4 warehouses and 70 employees. And before the Key Bridge collapsed last month, she says most of this cargo would have come in on container ships through the Port of Baltimore, just 10 minutes away. Now it's arriving at the port of Norfolk, Virginia, several hours to the south, or in New York to the north.
So other truckers are bringing it to the warehouse where normally we would take it in. Our own trucks would pick it up. So we lose out on that revenue.
After the bridge collapsed, Monahan still had some containers to pick up at the port. But with no more coming in, she had to lay off most of her drivers. She left it to HR manager Kristen Perrin to have those conversations.
They were difficult. A lot of them were understanding, like they expected it. They knew it would be coming, but it's probably the worst part of my job.
But a few weeks later, Monahan says the state approved the company for a worker retention grant,
which will allow us to keep the drivers employed even when we don't have a full day for them. They don't have to collect unemployment, which is not enough money for them to live on. So we'll be able to at least keep them employed.